The United States has never apologized for the atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The nuclear bombs instantly killed almost 250,000 people, mostly civilians. Japan and the United States moved on from World War II to forge one of the most successful alliances in the world. Yet the hibakusha, the atomic bomb survivors, are the living reminders of Hiroshima's devastation for the nuclear era. The legacy of developing the atomic bomb has continued for over 7 decades. But was the atomic bombing that started the rush for nuclear arms a war crime?
A short time ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima and destroyed its usefulness to the enemy. That bomb has more power than 20,000 tons of TNT.
Wataru Namba was a junior college student. He was taking a math class.
One B-29 came over. Every day, those days, reconnaissance plane came over, taking a picture of Hiroshima. 8:15, all of a sudden, strong flash came from the window side, and it's so bright, and the whole world is white colored. Even I can see it in my hand, and unbearably hot. I hit the floor, and big blast hit the whole school building. I became unconscious. I didn't know what happened.
Wataru was directly exposed to radiation.
When I woke up, the whole area became black. I began to crawl between a chair and a desk.
He saw the destruction the 9,700-pound uranium bomb had caused. Time in Hiroshima stopped at 8:15 a.m. on August 6, 1945. 3 days later, the US detonated a second atomic bomb on Nagasaki. Since that fateful day, public opinion on the atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki has shifted. Take a look at this graph. A study found 85% of Americans approved of dropping atomic bombs in 1945. Less than 60% of Americans approved 60 years later. On the 71st anniversary, President Barack Obama became the first US president to visit Hiroshima.
We come to ponder a terrible force unleashed in a not-so-distant past. We come to mourn the dead.
By the way, at the time as Commander-in-Chief, he held the launch codes for over 900 nuclear warheads. And to this day, Americans overwhelmingly believe the atomic bombing of Japanese cities was the right thing to do.
So I saw he's in Japan, in Hiroshima, and that's fine. Just as long as he doesn't apologize, it's absolutely fine. Who cares?
The US has never apologized. That's significant as the US is the only country ever to have dropped an atomic bomb.
I think the overwhelming narrative is that the bombs were dropped to hasten the end of the war.
Professor Norma Field is Professor Emeritus of East Asian Studies at the University of Chicago.
Different numbers were given, which gradually escalated about the numbers of American lives saved.
Historians have for decades debated why Washington decided to use the atomic bomb. Revisionist historians argued Japan was ready to surrender before the atomic bombs.
Can these debates ever be settled? Partly, I think, because I think it is testimony to how we human beings have registered the gravity of that act.
Let's take a look at the real-life impact of the A-bomb. The US bombings indiscriminately killed almost 250,000 Japanese civilians. People suffered long-term effects from radiation exposure. Survivors were left traumatized. So you might be asking, why aren't the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki called war crimes?
That's a really good and thorny question, and I think the answer is one of prevarication. Even the International Court of Justice taking this up later on, perhaps in the 60s, I think, would say, really, yes, they should be war crimes.
Modern international humanitarian law was established with the Geneva Conventions of 1949. Their definition of war crimes includes intentionally killing civilians.
Aerial warfare itself, the technology, has made it very, very difficult to maintain distinctions between non-combatants and combatants. I think the notion of victor's justice is really important. War crimes trials, tribunals in Germany and Japan have been conducted by the Allied powers.
The US government hasn't ever had to answer for the atomic bombings in court. You see, there's still some ambiguity around nuclear weapons and international law. The International Court of Justice hasn't ruled whether nuclear weapons would be lawful or unlawful in an extreme situation such as self-defense, even though the United Nations has repeatedly condemned nukes. And note, the UN Security Council's 5 permanent members are all armed with nuclear warheads.
As its heart, the Security Council, which is dominated by the nuclear states, also has a great deal to do with how nuclear weapons will be viewed.
The US has a triad of land-based missiles, nuclear submarines, and bombers. In 2019, half of the warheads were deployed around the world and ready to go. One of these warheads is 80 times more powerful than the bomb dropped in Hiroshima. How Washington chooses to use its nuclear threat in foreign policy at best remains a grey area.
In the past, we've had success is because of that threat of mutual nuclear destruction. I want to make sure that I'm not taking a deterrence off the table.
So how has the US come to terms with atomic bombings in Hiroshima and Nagasaki? You see, information about Hiroshima and Nagasaki was censored after the war, and Americans were immersed in a nuclear craze. Bars and clubs started serving a drink called the atomic cocktail.
If you look at many of the aerial photographs, well, all the aerial photographs of the two cities, you see nothing. You see city blocks, as it were, level to the ground. We don't realize that we're actually looking at mass graves. Americans have been stunningly ignorant and remain so about the dangers of radiation exposure.
The impact of the atomic bomb was felt on US soil too. Since the first atomic bomb, uranium in the US has been mined in Navajo Nation. It's home to 250,000 people. Many have died of kidney failure and cancer linked to uranium contamination here. And that's not all. Government-sponsored scientists injected 18 patients with dangerous radioactive substance between 1945 and 1947. Human radiation experiments continued across the country for another 30 years. It came to a stop with stricter regulation on human testing. As the Cold War arms race heightened, many Americans feared a nuclear war could happen at any time. John F. Kennedy saw a future where the US would face dozens of nuclear-armed nations. The US later signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. In 2010, a new treaty negotiation started at the UN to prohibit any nuclear weapons, but the US and other nuclear-armed countries rejected it. In Japan, Hiroshima is part of the national narrative. Peace Memorial Park is in the center of Hiroshima, and the legacy of Hiroshima lives today in the memories of the hibakusha.
These survivors have made it their mission to speak to the world because they are desperate to do what they can to make sure that we can live in a world without nuclear weapons.
We don't know if there will be another arms race. We don't know if we'll see another atomic bombing. The war crimes debate hasn't been settled, but we do know that atomic bombings devastated a whole generation. Its impact is still seen and felt.
I have to escape from the spot. I run and run. I realized I have a cousin, so I thought I'd better drop by and check it. And sure enough, 90% his body is burned, his face, skin separated, all his hand, skin, peeled and hanging on this nail side like this, and looked like a ghost.